Hey guys, welcome to episode 5 of the Emmaus project. This week, Dan, is joined by Will Iererua. Will is the youth director for North New Zealand Conference, and he's an all-round great guy. And we had a good time, and we had some good laughs, but we also touched on some really deep, really deep and even sort of painful sort of experiences of growing up, fatherlessness and fatherhood, and our own journeys, particularly as fathers of children with ASD. So I hope you enjoy, hope you get something out of it, and please like and share, and please send us a message if there was something you enjoyed or wanted to hear about. We'll catch you soon. See ya. Will, it's good to have you, man. Welcome to the Emmaus project. It's so good to catch up. It's oh man, like we've caught up a couple of times like since college, but it hasn't been much because I went to Western Australia, you went to New Zealand, and
Promised Land.
There's a whole lot of land and ocean in between those two things, and a whole lot of time zone. It's almost different days in time zone.
It's strange because we were really close. Like I remember we would hang out heaps in between classes, sharing notes. But when you leave college, life just goes on. And
you would try and get me to exercise more, or try and get me to run. That was. I think I went on one run with you, and that was about it. I'm not a runner.
We went to the gym a few times, I remember, and we had our workouts on.
Yeah, the running's not I'm not a runner, as you, which is abundantly obvious to anyone who's ever seen me in real life. But so you said you're in New Zealand, on the North Island. And what do you do over there? Whereabouts do you live?
Yeah, so I'm in Auckland, just on the far south border. So right on the southern tip, there is a group of hills called the Bombay Hills. Go down there, and there's a renowned town for ice cream, the best ice cream in the world, called Pocono. So if anyone's ever coming around, come check it out. Yeah. Okay. So they have like it's a Chinese like local store, but they have like a bar of like 40-50 flavors, and it's cheap as chips. You can just stack up on your cone or double cone. Some people go there and get like 12 or 16 scoops, and these are generous scoop sizes, and just stack up the ice cream, and they're like.
Dude, I guess like you're lucky because it's New Zealand, so it's not going to melt in a real hurry. It stays frozen for a while.
Some just do it for the show. Like they'll take a selfie and then get a takeaway container and just pour it in and just eat it by the spoon. And it's kind of cheating in my books.
Yeah.
But so I ever since I left college a year after you. And for the past 7-8 years, I've been pastoring here in Auckland, and worked with a number of different churches. When one got sick of me, I was just passed on to the next. And with our high school in Auckland too, as a chaplain. Oh, nice. And it's been good.
But what do you do? You're not a local church pastor now. What are you doing now?
No. So that transitioned at the start of this year. Moved into the youth and chaplaincy role. So we're real local church strong here in North NZ. We only have 2 departmental people. Yeah. So really want to keep serving in my local church with my family.
Yep. Oh, I just lost you.
Being part of the outreach mission. Yeah.
No, that's cool. It's just buffering. I'll just give it a sec. I can chop.
Shall I go back to the start?
No, it's all good. So you're working in youth department with real focus on local church kind of stuff. Can I ask you, like, from our time, like at college, I wouldn't have expected you to be working in like a youth in a youth ministry role.
What are you trying to say, Dan?
No, I'm not saying like that. It's not like that you're not good at it, or that you're not those things. But that's not like a direction that I would have
No.
gone, oh, Will, yeah, nah, he's a youth ministry guy.
Oh, totally. And I would have been the first to have put my hand up for that pathway as well.
Yeah.
I loved working with adults, a little bit of kids, but not in that high school youth, young adult. It just didn't, it wasn't an immediate gift set for me, probably because I had just come out of the age group and had quite a turnaround in my life.
Yeah.
But God's really shifted things for me. And I think once I got to probably about my 4th or 5th year in ministry, he really just put me in a place where I was thinking differently about where the church is.
Yeah.
And I think he just changed my passions. And as the Spirit just gives gifts here and takes some away there, he just put me in a place where making disciples among the younger age groups and generations was a huge burden on my heart.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, no, I'm glad you agreed with me that it wasn't just something that it was my perspective. But but you said something in that response where you were saying like you'd only just you'd had like a drastic change in your life fairly recently before going to college. So how old you were pretty young when you came to college. So how old were you when you made the move to come and study to be a pastor?
I came to college when it was a year out from high school, so 18, 19, and it was in my last year of high school that I met God. Friend in my class introduced me to Jesus, a very passionate Pentecostal, and God just took a hold of my life. And I think I was most interested in him because like family just was a mess for me growing up, and still have lots to be grateful for. But, I really struggled to trust people. And the idea of Jesus being true and being real, being reliable, it really struck a chord with me. So I went digging, and he changed my heart, man.
Yeah, there's a couple of pathways that I want to go on. And one's about your family, but I think we'll sort of come back to that in a minute. But
sure.
How do you end up going to study ministry become an Adventist pastor when you get introduced to Jesus just a year or two before by a Pentecostal? It's like that seems like a speedy transition between different things. Not
I think God has always had a way of putting me in the fast lane, maybe so I don't get distracted, and just behave myself as much as possible. So I suppose the quick transition from meeting God and getting to college, I had like a dream to get into rugby seriously and architecture, but I remember it was towards the end of that last year of high school that after I had met God, someone knocked on my door who was a cousin's friend who invited us to church, and he was from our local Adventist church in West Auckland. And I was in a place where I was open to go in church. Yeah, I'm keen to learn more. Had a Bible that I'd started reading. So just a simple knock on the door and them willing to drive us there, take us home after, it was all that was needed. Like I was sold. I walked in, found people who loved God by the book. It wasn't about being PC, and lived it. They loved us, you know.
That's a big thing. So like they were pretty open and accepting of you and welcoming and stuff.
Big time. And they didn't impose anything, but helped me to understand, you know, who they are. It came across really authentic.
Yeah.
And most of all, like they just wrapped their arms around us, man. Like
And what church was this? Like give them a shout
Henderson, in West Auckland, and Terry Johnson, who ended up leaving there after like a few months I was there for WA. And then became the pres there. To Sydney. He baptized me.
Oh, no way. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
That was just a couple of months in. He was awesome, mate. Like I just had so much respect for the way he made God interesting. Yeah. And he just a practical thinker as well. So I was kind of heartbroken when I found out he was leaving, but God had a plan.
Yeah. No, like That's cool. No, I didn't. You probably would have told me that it was that guy at college, but I had no idea who Terry was at that time. And
Yeah,
then went
yeah,
and spent
exactly.
5 years with him in WA.
It
And
was
a
interesting.
few of those years he was my president. Yeah.
Oh man, when I was in the water, like I actually had long hair, believe it or not, at that point, like
Yeah.
kind of down to my chest area. I remember I was in the pool of one of the local leaders, and Terry said, "And I reckon this guy's going to make an awesome pastor." It was just like a public joke. Like I was like, "Oh, that's a nice thought," you know.
Yeah.
That'll be the
Oh,
day.
little did he know he was prophesying over your life.
Yeah.
But let's sort of go back to that first sort of stream in your response there. You're talking about you didn't have like a stable sort of upbringing, and you sort of from there you sort of had some issues with trusting people and that kind of stuff. So what was life like growing up for
Yeah,
you?
I'm the youngest of three, and
Yeah.
like just to
Two
give a
sisters,
scoop,
right?
two older sisters,
Yeah.
and raised by my mum. So I grew up in a house filled with ladies,
Yeah.
and learned a lot about life and how to play your cards right, I suppose.
Yeah. When to
Um,
not say anything.
yeah, exactly. When to play cool and just to keep it shut.
Always good advice.
Yeah. So my dad's from the Gilbert Islands, or Kiribati. It's called Kiribati.
Yeah.
And mum's from England, and they met through work. But I came along last, and I was born in the islands. But there was just amidst my parents falling in love in paradise, there were a number of complications that weren't being addressed, and my dad was not. So domestic abuse haunted my mum and my sisters for several years before I came along, and it continued when we shifted to England. And before I can remember, my dad was forced by the local court hearing to there were just restraining orders, and mum was put in hospital a number of times, and house was burnt down on one occasion. You know, pretty crazy stuff.
That's like really like I know like you're kind of guy that sort of, like you said, just plays things out like it's this sort of happened, but like that's pretty dramatic kind of stuff.
Or it's crazy. Like I know we all have our stories, but this is one that's I think for me, I grew up and we didn't really go to church. I went to a Catholic school, and so was aware of God, but that was my identity, that my dad, and now that I am older and have met him, he really isn't a crazy guy, but this was how I understood that I'm just a product of.
Well, how do you like in seeing that as a kid, like would have been like terrifying, you know, in some respects.
Yeah, like just to give it like a practical point, I just growing up in primary school, I'd see my mum who would never hold a sharp knife, you know, and sisters who were always careful walking up and down staircases. Wow. So it's pretty real stuff, and still to this day, like it's awesome. I get to share church life and my faith with my mum and sisters, but you know, scars are still there. Yeah. And I have the privilege of not having a memory, but they definitely don't. So yeah, you still walk through this stuff, and dealing with domestic abuse, even in a spiritual environment, with the blessing of knowing Jesus, you still have to work through it, and it can be hard.
Yeah. So in England, like, how did you end up in New Zealand?
Yeah, man, I really believe this was a God thing. I was 11 years old, and my family just wanted a fresh start for obvious reasons. Yeah. And mum's always been someone who wants to do crazy things. And that's why she moved to the islands when she was in her.
Like, that's why she married like a guy from Kiribati. And like
exactly.
That sort of fits. Right? Yeah.
Oh, just an amazing person, but she just doesn't like fitting the status quo. Yeah. So we moved down under, and I think it was really to find peace. And little did we know we were going to find that by meeting God. And I think He led us here so that when I was in high school, that friend of mine was going to introduce me to Christ. And as years would progress, after going to college, I would be in a place where I could introduce my sisters to Him, and my mum as well. And I think my sisters are in a fairly committed place. Mum like she'll say happy Sabbath and come to church very regularly, even goes to church without us now,
Yeah.
prior to lockdown. So like, I'm praising God.
So does she live pretty close by to you guys?
Mum's retired now, and she lives with us.
Oh, nice.
So yeah.
Oh, cool.
So we're together, and for me, like a huge part of the way I can honor God and love my own wife and kids is just to live in the light of the scars of the past and make sure that I'm doing everything I can to provide healing and to make sure the cycle doesn't continue through me.
Yeah. Well, and like something we're going to talk about soon, but like we were just mentioning beforehand about how like difficult experiences, God can use those to help you connect with people. And, so like I can only imagine like in New Zealand, like domestic violence is a significant problem, like as it is as it is in Australia and other places. And so for you to have that horrible experience that nobody should have, but I think it's the definition of providence, like where Paul talks about how all things work together for the good of those that love him. It's not that God causes bad things to happen, but that God can take those bad things and bring some good out of them.
Yeah.
And it's
Totally.
like that God can take that bad experience that nobody should have and that God didn't cause, but he can take that and bring good out of it by using you to be able to connect with people and to relate with people. And I like, that's for me, that's what that text really
it's powerful, man. It makes me think of Joseph too. In hindsight, once he had reconnected with his brothers in Egypt, and he's like, God used this for good. God sold me.
What you meant for evil, God's used for good.
Yeah.
And so, like and that is pretty crazy, like example, because that they tried to kill one person, and through them trying to kill him, he actually saved like thousands of people. Like a whole nation of people were saved. Like, which is pretty like a wild thing to happen.
His grace just transforms situations. It's incredible.
So moving forward, like you're young guy, go to college, sort of towards the end of college, you get married. Sort of take a bit of a break. And was it about a year like you spent back in New Zealand?
Yeah, I disappeared, I think I took a semester off. I disappeared and then I came back married.
Yeah, everyone was like, what just happened? So you married, and then
like, if I can just speak to that, like it was one of the best things because I was probably 21 at the time and loving college, but my grandmother had just died and an uncle, both in England, and family just needed some extra help, and I was like, oh, I'll take a semester off. So I went over, and it was one of the best things I ever did. Like, super lonely. I was living with my aunt in the middle of nowhere in Wiltshire, like just surrounded by wheat fields, but just got to really press nearer to God, learn so much more about him and what he sees in me. And because of that, I was just fired up to get back into serving him, following him, and even, I think I grew up a bit. I was ready to get married as well. So
like definitely, I think there's those times where God, and I think I spoke with Ray about it, like how God uses seasons to like mature you, kind of thing, and it can be like, and it has to be difficult, right? Like, because it's only through that difficulty that you actually grow.
Totally.
But so you still young guy, married, had first baby like towards the end of college. Hey, you might have had one more year to go.
Yeah, like we didn't actually plan on it. I thought we were being careful, but we had Kevin.
A pleasant surprise.
Oh, for sure. And again, like this is the irony of how God works, because we were like married for a year, and then we got news that Kevin was coming along. But man, like that year, just before I graduated, it was just it was crafted so well for me to prepare for ministry, because I was like 23 at the time, so still had a lot of growing up to do. understand about life, about what people are dealing with. And in that last semester, I remember I was called. I think it was like September, and just like we can be, have a door open from God in any way. Kevin came along,
Yeah.
and then my dad called me for the first
Yeah.
time. And just to fast forward, I found once, because we had totally lost contact with him for all of my primary school years. We got over to New Zealand and letters started to exchange, and we found out that he had been incarcerated. So he was inside in England, and he was stuck there. And just a lot of pain that surrounds that situation too. He was inside for 12 years, and he was released that last semester.
Wow.
I was in college, and I don't know if I told you guys. You had already left WA, I think.
Yeah.
But
I remember you telling me like about your dad and stuff though. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was released on parole, and he was in Brisbane while we were in Coonbrook, and he rang me at home. It was just the most bizarre
it's amazing
conversation.
that he got to Brisbane. Like, I don't reckon it would happen these days.
No, he was on parole and he was being deported. So he was basically being, for lack of a better word, he was just being.
He was in transit. Yeah.
He was at the airport, but he called, and it was just so glad that God had stepped into my life, because every other part of me wanted to get some pretty sweet revenge.
Yeah.
And he said he wanted to meet me, and I was keen because I had a plan up my sleeve of how I was going to try and settle the score. I flew just after graduating just to go and see him for a week. And I was so keen just to, because in the islands you can get away with a lot of stuff, man. But I got off the plane, saw him, and I just touched by God's grace of how he's forgiven me so much. So opened my arms and gave him a hug, and home for a week before I came back to New Zealand to pursue this call of ministry.
Because it's a hard thing, and for me, like we have different stories, but there's similar aspects to it. Like my dad was around, he was present for my upbringing, but he wasn't really present. If you know, like he was there, but I've never had a relationship with my dad in any kind of real sort of sense of the word. Like I couldn't tell you, like, and it's sort of, for people that maybe like have had like a normal upbringing or whatever, like they might not be able to relate or understand, but like I have no recollection of my dad ever saying that he loved me, or that he was proud of me, or that he was, like nothing. Like there was no sort of relate, like father, what you would sort of like imply, sort of what you would think father. None of that. And so, like, my parents ended up sort of getting divorced sort of after I'd left high school and stuff. And I haven't, like, so Jack and I have been married, putting the pressure on me now, under the pressure, 07, so 13 years this year, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But awesome. She's never met him. So like, so it's probably been 15, 16 years since like I've had any contact with him. And like I can, and there's been in that sort of time, like, I've had like my Jesus experience, and I've had a whole lot of growing, and had my own kids and my own family and all that kind of stuff. But even still, like there's this, I just don't know what I would say, what I would say, and this sort of, this kind of like it's hard to explain, but it's sort of like, it's not really an anger, but like there's like an angry element to it, but there's like almost like a grief kind of thing, like attached to it. And honestly, like, and what you sort of said, like through God, like I've was able to sort of deal with that, and sort of move forward and through like
Nice.
godly men in my life as well, was able to sort of look and sort of go, oh, this is what fatherhood should be, and this is what like it's supposed to be like.
It's good. So recognizing where there was a gap and then choosing to not be a victim to that and to not continue it either.
And like, to be honest with you, a lot of that, like especially early days, was driven by fear of not wanting to be that.
Wow.
if you know what I mean, like of being sort of like fearful of being my dad to my kids, like, and you just sort of, and
Same here, bro.
yeah, and that's a challenge because what one of the things that I was talking to you about and that I wanted to chat about in this episode was sort of our journeys in fatherhood, because you have 4 kids now. You're doing your bit for the economy. I've got 2, and
my retirement plan.
I'm okay. I'm okay with 2, and but like we have like that sort of fatherlessness background, but we've sort of had you had like a difficult journey in fatherhood in some ways, or extra challenges put in fatherhood. So I was wondering if you want to talk about Kevin a little bit, or in your journey, your guys' journey there.
I'll go, like, before I go there, I'll just say, because I think this is a point where so many can relate to. I found that if you can say that you have been loved and nurtured by your dad, like, you're a minority and super blessed, because inside and outside of the church, this story is just reoccurring all over. Our dads are either not there or they're not emotionally there, and so this is so real, and it's really cool that you can look back on that, and like, I think there's a difference between resentment and recognizing a boundary, and this is where we can really, I think, do ourselves a lot of healing work, where we're not holding a grudge, but being honest with where our heart is at the same time.
And I like, that's what I sort of think, like, you can forgive someone, and like you said, you can not hold that grudge or that that wound or whatever, but it doesn't necessarily mean that like everything's,
you're not happy families,
everything's normal or whatever. No. Because the forgiveness kind of thing, to a large extent, is for your own good, right? Like, because David talks about it, like it's this thing where it's like rots your bones, like when you're holding on to stuff.
Totally.
And so yeah, but yeah,
because the culmination for that side of the story for me is, last year my dad died. Got a call one morning that he was just walking to a local store and his heart just failed on him. And in the islands, there's not a lot of strong ambulance service or modern hospital equipment. So that was it. And I remember going to say farewell, and I was just so glad, as I was reflecting with God, that in the best way I could, I just carried out the steps of reconciliation and let him know that he is loved. So it's so hard when you're in a place and you've been really tainted by guilt to be the bigger man, and sometimes the children have to do it.
There's so many things I could say about that, but let's go back to your sort of journey, like with kind of fatherhood and having babies.
So young dad, and I was kind of similar. I never wanted to be my dad. And so I think with any full-time role, if you're working, it's just, you have to try and work out that balance of being present and providing at the same time. So Kevin came along, and then 2 years later we had Abel,
Yeah.
and then we continued to keep the production line going.
Yep.
And we had Uriah
Yep.
2 years after that, and then 3 years ago we had Sami Soni.
Yeah.
So four boys, and very energetic, just like their mum. And
Oh man, come on! Don't make me drag your mum in here and ask you what you were like when you were a child.
yeah, no, totally. Like just as cheeky and
Yeah.
adventurous as I am, but have their mum's good looks,
Yeah.
which is a good thing. And yeah, I think the key thing about the journey with the boys is when Kevin came along, like it was just a beautiful time of learning. He was just had a fairly usual development through his first year.
Yeah.
And then when we had Abel, we noticed there was a huge difference.
Yeah.
So Abel, just his eye contact was very very slim to none, and just the way he responded to us was super different. So
Yeah.
we, as parents, you never want to jump to conclusion.
Yeah.
But we were conscious, and I'd spent some time in and out of college semesters just working with different additional needs
Yeah.
people in the community. So yeah, I was aware that something possibly could be there. And in New Zealand, there's all sorts of different avenues with having diagnoses done, but went in a queue. And when Abel was 3, we went for him to be assessed with a pediatrician panel. And one of the most painful experiences we've done as a family, just going there, and they were lovely for what as best as they could be, but basically just having a handshake and a booklet handed to you. Your child is on the autism spectrum. They have autism spectrum disorder, and Abel, they said he's just on the very extreme end. And you should see this kid. He's got bright red hair, and just Beatrice and I. Well, I used to have dark hair, and Beatrice, she's Tongan, so she's got fairly dark hair too.
Yeah.
But just an amazing kid, but just breaks your heart. And I think the biggest thing we were struggling with is, it's our genes that are inside of him, and somewhere along the lines, obviously we know it's sin, but just we failed him in some degree because of how he's been made. And it's just not nice just when you go down that experience. And
I think like with it's something you don't understand until you have your own children. But like your greatest joy in life and your greatest happiness comes from those moments with your children, and your greatest sadness and pain and suffering comes from the same, like, they're like these rods of like joy and suffering, and like it
hits you.
It hits you. Because like our journey with ASD is really different to that. But like, so with our boy, it's really, there was all like, it's really kind of funny, but like, it's not funny, but like from a baby, like we were always sort of going to doctors, like, there was always sort of things, like, he just didn't, like, there's just didn't sort of sleep, and like he was hyper aware of stuff, and just sort of things like going, like, there's just like something kind of there. And we spent years and years and years like going to different places, and then like we'd find like some things, like we went to different pediatricians and sleep specialists and different kind of things, and then sometimes like you'd sort of feel like, oh, you go through a season and it would be better, and you go, oh, maybe it's just this, or it's just us, and looking back, we sort of look and realize sort of now like how much our life revolved around like him, and like in the sense of like what he was capable of in like a social sense. Like, I mean,
This
Not in
was
like,
your eldest, eh?
yeah, not in like an academic sense. I'm sort of talking about like in a social sense, and what he would cope with, and different things. And until, and like, we had some horrible experiences. Like, I remember we went to, and even now, like, it's a real sore spot for me and Jack. Like, we went to this one, finally got referred to this pediatrician in Perth, and he basically listened to us for like 10 minutes and was just like, oh, look, um we could sort of do some investigations about like why all this sort of stuff's happening and blah blah blah. But really, uh, he essentially just told us we needed to do a parenting course. and,
What?
and like, it was just like this knife, like, and we had like Knox, and Knox was like a toddler and that sort of thing at this point, and we're going, like, they are completely different. Like, we know, like, we know that because you got like a point where you can sort of judge it off, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty devastating until finally, um you know and there, like, there was all sorts of different little things, and we go, oh, maybe it's this, and because he ended up needing glasses, and there's funny stories around, like, when he finally got his glasses. I think he was in prep, and like, he's walking out of the optometrist, and he's like, just like putting his heads on like a swivel, looking around, and he's just like, whoa, it looks so different. Like,
Wow.
because his eyesight wasn't great. But you
Oh.
just had no idea. Like, so you go, oh, maybe it's that, and that's sort of like a reason for different things. And then, like, we finally saw like an OT about something completely unrelated to sort of that, and she does these tests with him and goes, oh, he's got sensory processing disorder. And that was like, that made sense for a lot of kind of things, and we're just like, oh yeah, like, definitely tick tick, ticked all the boxes. And then, like, we've been super blessed that we've had fantastic schools, that he's been involved in, and that, in Perth, like, an awesome small Adventist school, smallish, and he had fantastic teachers there that loved him
Yeah.
and sort of gave him personal sort of attention. And then over here in Queensland, like, he's had this fantastic school as well that have sort of nursed him through school, kind of thing, until, like, it just wasn't sort of, there was still just not quite right. And it's always been in like, it was sort of always in the back of our mind, like, oh, maybe he's on the spectrum, kind of thing. And he's had teachers that are going like, oh, like, it's almost like he's on on the spectrum. But then, like, so we've had like a different experience, like, where Abel's like been like on the sort of extreme end, Archie's sort of on a different part of the sort of spectrum.
Mm.
But I remember, like, we finally went to this psychologist who was fantastic, spent like a few hours with her, and she did like who's like a specialist in ASD stuff,
Nice.
did the tests, and she's like, yep, he definitely has ASD. And I remember, even though, like, we were pretty sure, right? Like, and like had been pretty sure for ages, it was just like this
Yeah.
bang, like, like, devastating,
Big
like,
time, man.
it's just this, and it seems really silly because, but then as soon as like somebody like tells you, like, you like you said, you sort of knew, but then, like, as soon as somebody actually goes, yeah, this, it's just like this.
They acknowledged it.
Yeah. So, like,
Ouch.
it's like, I started my ministry when he was 2,
Mm.
and church, has been like a battle for like 10 years because of Archie. Because he'll go through school. So like when he was little, it's because he was hyperactive, and then goes to school, and then Saturday morning, like he's just exhausted because he's had to like survive getting through school all week, and then it gets to Saturday morning, and like for him, the idea of like being surrounded by people again, and by having to go and in this sort of noisy environment and different sort of things, it just feels like hell to him in that sort of space. But how have you guys gone, like juggling like the ASD and church and sort of life like in general?
Yeah, because it's a great question to ask, because you're right, it's a spectrum. And I remember the pediatrician told us there is no hard evidence as to what causes it, which makes it so much more complex. How the puzzle is the
well, and there's not like I do this and you're okay.
No, it's not a quick fix diagnosis or prescription. It's something that's still being understood, which is frustrating, because you want to know exactly what's best for your child or for someone in your community. So like for us, we were learning as I was going to church every week preaching, and Kevin and himself, like Kevin's probably more adventurous than Abel. Abel, there's just been no way to communicate, and like he's 6 now and he's still nonverbal and in his nappies. But we would go to church, and to be honest, it got to a point where Beatrice would just stay home sometimes.
Oh yeah. And, but like, dude, it was the same. Like, even though, people will meet Archie and like they won't necessarily even realize, like,
exactly.
but it's like behind the scenes, they have no idea of like what we've gone through over the last 11 years.
And I totally like parenting at a typical church or an Adventist church. It's hard work in itself, because our churches are designed for adults. We have Sabbath school rooms on the side. We have a little kid story, but
which can I just like get my hobby horse out there? Like, I hate kid stories in church. I'm sorry to everybody listening to this, but because it's like it's a sacred cow in so many places, but it feels so trivial and so insulting. Like, Anyway,
so what happens when someone asks you?
To like vent my frustration.
Need to get it out there. What happens when someone asks you to do the children's story?
They very rarely ever ask me.
And are your kids allowed to go up for the children's story? That's what I want to know.
You just got to
don't go up for that. Just sit where you are. We
don't
agree with this.
Read the record.
Because it's a social disability, it's it's really hard to navigate, because the things that we don't even have to think about, like being able to understand your physical boundaries with someone, which has changed bizarrely of recent, being able to read someone's social body language and just hold a logical conversation. This is just, it has to be explained to the T. And like our kids have just, because Uriah, he's been diagnosed on the spectrum. He's a lot more functional as well. And Samisani, he's going to have a diagnosis soon, but he is like the spitting image of Abel at the moment. So we're not really, we're not really counting our best chips on this, kind of just in the realistic zone. And it's, God is still leading and keeping us positive, but a lot of people just label my kids as just naughty, and that we just can't control them. And for Beatrice, I think especially from a cultural perspective, this is like her nightmare when people immediately judge her as a bad parent. Like, she holds it so dear. So we've just learned to pick our battles. Some days we'll go to church and we'll just go for Sabbath school. Some days I'll go just with maybe Kevin and Uriah. Some days I'll just go on my own. And well, I think what I've done, it depends from family to family, because churches will have people who understand,
Yeah.
um, and sometimes they'll have leadership that have things in place. But I think the best thing we can have is just a few families who have been appointed just to support these people, and largely it'll be done from a distance.
Yeah.
Like it's hilarious. Sometimes we'll have these dear old saints, like these
Oh,
senior
yeah.
ladies, come and say, "Let me have the kids for a few minutes. You go inside and enjoy worship." And it's the sweetest thing.
Yeah.
On one occasion, we actually took them up on the offer, because Beatrice I was playing piano and she was leading the song service. So we're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that'll actually be perfect." So we're like doing the music, and three of the kids like run down the center aisle,
Yeah.
grab
Well,
the microphones at the front.
like I had this saying like about children. It's children are both humbling and sanctifying. Like, they lead you to a place of humility, and they also are God's tools of sanctification.
For the church.
For the church, because they will they will push you to your limits, and they will reveal how wicked your heart really is. Like when they drive you to frustration and anger, you're just like, oh my gosh, why are you testing me like this? But like it's a definite eye opener to where your heart actually is,
Yeah.
and how much patience you actually have, and that sort of thing.
Too right. It's a sensory thing too. So,
Yeah.
every child on the spectrum will be able to process the different senses differently. Like
Yeah.
Abel, he does a lot of, ear holding,
Yeah.
and he'll, jitter and have mannerisms with his hand that are quite repetitive. And we get that. That's just how he's able to process the different noises and things that he's seeing around him.
Yeah,
But I think,
that's sort of similar. Like with like that's kind of one of our signs. Like with Arch is if he like how he's going, like if he's starting to lose himself, like in like his own like little world kind of thing. It's like, oh, like he's just sort of like shutting down and like shutting out because it just becomes too much. And like it's because he's and because they have like amazing gifts as well. Like we were used to be like amazed at times, like growing up, like when Arch was growing up, like we'd read him a bedtime story or whatever, and like he'd pick a book that was just like too long, too long for me.
right, yeah.
And like it would be this book, and it would be one that we've read like before, And when I say too long, it's like 15 pages instead of like 5 pages or whatever that I wanted to read, or 10 pages. And so like I try and like skip a page or like skip lines or whatever. And he couldn't read or anything like at this age. And he'd be like, hey, like you've missed a page. Like so like he would know these books like off, and it could be something like we haven't read for months, and he would know that you've skipped lines or pages, and we were just like,
it's amazing.
who are you that you know that you can do that thing? So like the processing thing is like it's a gift and a curse, like in some ways, because I sort of describe it to people like our brains are like computer processors, right? And we sort of have these our senses are like motorways, and and like average people, the motorway just runs and like it's all sort of good. But and you can have sensory processing stuff and not be on the spectrum. But for kids, I think a lot of kids on the spectrum seem to have sensory processing stuff. It's like the motorways are just like flowing so fast that they're just absorbing every piece of information that their processor just can't keep up with it. And so
the senses are acutely revved up, so it's a lot stronger, their sensitivity, than what we would.
So like the psychologist we saw with Arch was like, say you got like a piece of paper and he's doing a test, and the piece of paper's been there's a photocopying line on the piece of paper, and there's the questions. His eyes absorb, like, give the same amount of preference to that photocopying line as every other piece of information.
That's it.
And so, like, they've just got like this wave of information like hitting them, and so it's just the trying to process all that is so hard. But yeah, so like it's churches, it's been a tough, painful journey, like, because it's not what you plan for, it's not what you hope for, it's not what you expect like your ministry to kind of be like. And I've probably been super protective because of all these sort of things. I've been really protective of my family, like, around, and probably overly protective in some ways, which means, like, because I'd sort of separate home and church, but like we always sort of thought our ministries would be a lot more intertwined kind of thing, but sort of, I think, and it, I can only say it's probably for my sanity with that, like, I've separated it too much. But what would you say to people, because it is like a common thing, and seemingly like more common thing, and part of that I think is like understanding to some extent, like people just, they have a label to give it and they understand it a little more than 30 years ago or 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But what would you sort of say to churches? You got like a family, they've got a child on the spectrum. What do you do?
Yeah. I think the most important thing to do is to be supporting the parents on a personal level, because at the end of the day, families get that this is their responsibility, and they're not going to come to church expecting everyone to bend over backwards. So understanding is huge. But like for us, we've had a few parents. A lot of them are women, because I think they just have this natural empathetic ability, and they'll just come aside and tap Beatrice on the shoulder, and they'll compliment about the things that they notice that are different in Abel, and it just lifts her up on eagle's wings, eh?
Yeah.
And I think if a church either assigns or puts a plan in place for those parents to be personally loved on and supported in a regular way, it doesn't have to be every week, but just checked in on, I think that'll go the extra mile, because their spiritual growth, our spiritual growth, it's hugely affected by this, because our time, our schedule, I think it's quite different from an average parent.
Yeah. Well, even just like, if we go be like super real, it's lonely.
Yeah.
Like, it's super lonely because you're socially, you're really constrained. And I know, like, early in my ministry, so we left college and went to Perth. We didn't know a soul in Perth. Like, it's 5 hours away. Knox was a baby. Archie was a hyperactive 2-year-old, and we were like, and like with socially constrained for Jack. Like, I'm out doing ministry and working and seeing people all the time, and like, I have less of a social need anyway. I'm much more introverted.
Don't come and talk to me. I'm fine.
Yeah, so like, whatever. Introverted than Jack anyway, and so, like, it was this really painful time for quite a significant chunk of our time in Perth, because it was just this. It was super lonely. Yeah, and so, like, I really think, like, that's really good advice in the, just reaching out to people and checking in on them, and just loving the parents. And I think, there's well-meaning people oh, but like,
I think, like, from a leadership perspective, like we talk about it all the time about how to be emotionally intelligent with others,
yeah,
where you don't allow your intentions to control your words,
yeah,
but you think in a way, and you speak in a way that accepts people
yeah,
and lets them know that this is their home too. So, like, yeah, a couple of times, some people have really stuck their foot in their mouth with
yeah,
Beatrice, and I've pulled them aside and really put them in their place, because it's as with anyone who walks into one of our churches, it's not a place to be ostracizing people.
yeah.
And as soon as you make a remark that is outside of really understanding someone, man, it's so damaging, eh? So
Out of ignorance, like, really.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Some people just say things because they can't handle the silence. You know?
Yeah. And like, it's just, you know, there's and some of the things, like, are kind of trivial, but like, you, as a as a one of the parents, like, you get really upset about it, or not upset about it, but like, it's really annoying. Like,
Yeah, it hits you.
um, it hits you, like, you know, people make comments like, so Archie growing up, like, this kid, he 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 is the most stubborn person you will ever meet in your entire life. Like,
Wow.
you cannot make him do something. Like, he just flat out will not do it.
Wonder where he gets that from.
Yeah. But like, you know, like, and people will, and the poor kid, like, you know, and it's part of, it's just like the growing thing, like, as parents and stuff. But you know, like, there's this sort of idea of, oh, kids need to eat what you give them, kind of thing. And for him, like, and this isn't like, you don't realize until down the track, but like, with kids, like for him, texture is a huge thing.
Mm,
And like, texture in his mouth is a huge thing. And
yeah, it's true.
and so, like, it was just like, there would just be things, and like, we're trying to like make him eat these things, and he would be like, and it, like, super, like, things that aren't big deal, like, it's not like Brussels sprouts or whatever, like, it would be like mashed potato, or, you know, like, you know, things that you should go, oh, like, it's tasty, kind of thing. But you know, he'd be like dry reaching, like, trying to and and finally, like, we ended up seeing someone about other stuff, and you know, we brought this up as like an issue, and they're just like, why are you making it an issue?
Mm.
You know, like, so what? Like, does he get enough? Is he getting enough nutrition? And we're like, well, yeah, like, he eats this, and this, and they're just like, so why are you making it a problem? And there was like, it's just this, but because we have like this like, you know, expectation we put on ourselves, but
Yeah.
like, also like a societal expectation. Oh, well, my kids, you know,
Mm.
they don't leave the table until they've eaten everything. And you're like, well, good for your kid, but like, my kid would be sitting there a week later.
Overnight.
Like, he just will not do it. Like, you know,
Yeah.
you will not, like, you can't, like, you know, he is the definition of like a rock and an immovable force. Like, cannot get him to do, because it is, and like, but like, because we didn't understand what it was for him. Like, it's not just a fussy thing. It's like, you're making me do something that's like horrible.
Mm.
It's not just oh, well, you're being difficult. And so, like, you know, I think for people,
It's,
yeah,
it's
just
learning to speak a new language,
yeah,
and learning to see life from their perspective.
yeah,
So yeah, it really takes a lot of patience and willingness to acknowledge that we've been wrong and that we don't actually know the answer. So I love that. Like, we hear from a specialist, you don't actually have to make that an issue. Like, we've had some similar advice, and it's liberating,
yeah,
and for a church to acknowledge, we don't actually know what to do for you guys, but we're here with you through it. And we want to be a church that, you know, that is a home for you and your children. Like that. That's awesome. And that gets us through.
And that's really cool. With what do you think? So, like, you've had like a crazy parenting experience. What do you think?
Just getting started.
Oh mate, wait till we're starting to hit the adolescence kind of phase, and I'm not ready. I'm not ready.
Not ready.
I'm not ready. But
take me, Lord. I'm ready.
yeah. Oh man. But just grateful to have boys. But but
gotcha.
But you know, like, I think sort of like what we were talking about before. What do you think? What have you learnt through? What are your key sort of things that you've learnt through this sort of difficult experience?
Yeah, good question. Man, like before I was married, I was like a super organized and OCD kind of person. I don't know if you remember, like I'll have all the assignment notes already, and life was good as long as I was at the helm. And
yeah.
I think in this case,
very in control for sure. Yeah.
in this case, it's learning to trust God enough where the things that even that I usually should be able to have a level of input towards, I don't, and learning to say it's okay to be in that place. Like I've just had to let go on so many accounts, and it's been really humiliating and growing at the same time. So it's been one of the best things for me to learn how to be patient and learn how to follow at the same time. And I think the best learning curve for me is actually let my children teach me. And like this is like parenting 101, but actually let their learning curves grow me at the same time. Like reflecting on my dad, like I think a key for me to be present is to really become more selfless as a man. And not just talk about it, but actually do it. So this really helps me just to put that into perspective. As I'm watching us grow and watching the battles that they're dealing with, just to rest in the privilege that God is on the throne, and I get to be His child, and so do they, and it's better they.
Yeah, so. Man, like it's powerful stuff because, you know, I think all kids teach you about God's grace, right? Like, they're so forgiving. Like, and there's times like, and it's like with Arch, where you just get like, it's just been, and it's pure selfishness on my own behalf, where you just get like really frustrated. Like, and like, and like, it's pure selfishness because he can't help it. You know, it's me trying to force something on him, or an unrealistic. It's me putting my expectations onto him.
Wow.
True. And I think like it doesn't matter whether your kid has ASD or not. Like that's probably relevant to everybody, but I think what I want for our churches is to love families more, for sure, and to take their expectations away from families, and to just to love and to be present. And I know that's
good.
really difficult because people have grown up in cultures, and they've grown up in their church experience where it's the kids are seen and not heard, and they're, oh well, when we were back when I went to church, like
In my day,
we would never have done that, and like half the time, like I think it's rubbish anyway, like because I'm sure that they got into trouble. Like, like they're just looking back in history with rosy colored glasses, like, and like it's not like kids magically now are hyperactive compared to what they were like 50 years ago. I'm sure that there were kids that were hyperactive and struggled and whatever, and they're just probably people that have never gone back to church ever because it was a hellhole of a place for them. But just to take away your own expectations from that, and just to be with people and to love people. Because sort of going back to your experience, like with Henderson sort of thing, was they didn't have expectation with you, they just loved you, and they had what they believed and did, but that wasn't the thing. It was they loved you and cared for you and walked with you, and
that was the best environment for me to make a quick decision for God, to get in the water, like.
And for like my journey as well, like with church, like it was it was like that they loved me and accepted me and cared for me in the church that I was at, was what that gives you, it's like that's the good soil where the Spirit can work, kind of thing.
Come on.
But like I think for a lot of families and our experiences testify to it, is that especially if you've got kids with some sort of needs, it's super lonely. It's a lonely experience. And I think for just for churches to go, hey, like set aside your own stuff and just to walk with people and to check in on people.
That's so good. And to do the help without being asked to, like, I reckon majority of the time people won't ask you for help, even though you always say, let me know if you need a hand with anything.
That's not really like
but intentionally, actively do the favor. Like we've had people just turn up and just offer a helping hand, or give us a call. Like don't think about it or promise it, just do it. And it's much more appreciated that way.
And like for me, is I think it's the like part of that, the loving kind of thing is and this is I think is for all kids, is to get to know them, like whatever age you are, like and to to give them a high five when you see them and say their name, like hey, how you going, like because well, I've gone on a bit of a journey like with my church, and I don't know how well it's gone, but we've been on a journey about, and I sort of keep trying to emphasize that the first mission that God's given you is this community and the children in this community. Like you're happy to give money to happy to give money to something over there. You're happy to do this, you're happy to do that, but you don't know the names of the kids, the 20 kids that come to this church. And as the adult, that responsibility is on you. To know, to get to know them and to talk to them, and to, like that's your burden. It's not their burden to get to know you. It's your burden to get to know them, and that's what God's given you to do. And that's that's a difficult thing for a lot of older people, I think, because it's a very different way of looking at it. Some people are fantastic and do it naturally, and
even for those who don't have their own children, and maybe that can be a painful thing, who for those who have wanted to. We're a part of a community, and the children in your church, they're your children as well. So feel like it's something you're part of.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I think that like that's a pretty natural kind of ending sort of spot. We'll have to get together and talk about some ministry stuff
Yeah.
sometime. But like what, and that my real heart for this will like was wanting to like to have the conversation about kids with needs and stuff out there in the church, because there is so much misunderstanding. There is so much, and I think it's just that people just don't know what to do to some extent. Like it's good intentions a lot of the time. But again, like we're blessed that God has given us these, the blessing of these situations is that we can then like connect with people that are going through the same experience and have some empathy and that kind of thing.
Good.
Man, if you could, last question, if there was
Good.
one thing that you could change about the church or get the church to do today, like click the switch and the church has done this, what would it be?
One thing
What's your one thing?
that the most important gathering for the church is the disciple-making small group. So in whatever way that looks, if it's a home Bible study, if it's a Zoom catch-up with a few mates from the community, that me as a disciple maker for Jesus, and that is the most important platform with my local church. If everyone was in that space, man, I think it'll be awesome.
Yeah, like that's confronting and challenging, like to, because we like, it's easy to say, oh yeah, like we value that, but you go, hey, no, like that's actually your most important thing. Like no, there'd be very few places that would sort of could say that, yeah, no, that's our most important thing that we do.
That's it. How about you?
Oh, how about me? Put me
Yeah.
on. I'm the one that asks the questions. I would, man, I'm a bit of a radical at heart. I would say that we would value people over buildings, and that that we would, you know, like I was just talking with some guys today, and I'm like, can you imagine, like, if through this COVID thing we go, hey, let's sell all our property, let's sell all our church property, and we go, hey, like let's focus on our highest priority, our disciple making groups, and we, hey, like maybe we sell everything and we build a few convention centers or something that we can hire out, and we go, hey, once a month we all get together and celebrate and whatever, but like our priority is community, and I'm not saying that we wouldn't buy properties, but like what we would do is we would it would all the only properties we would have would be community engaging properties. So they'd be like cafes or op shops or counseling centers or like whatever it is the need. That's the only property we would have. And
So good.
yeah. So like
So
that's a radical. I don't think we're ready for that conversation. but if you are.
However, I think we have really grown where we're in a place where we recognize that people are more important than the building. We just haven't fully let go of that building side.
We haven't like walked the neck. Well, we haven't gone, well, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And what's the logical steps?
Follow that.
Yeah. Man, crazy times. Thanks again, Will. Let's
good.
And thanks heaps for sharing about the difficult parts of your journey, and both younger and through ministry and fatherhood, and appreciate your openness, and it's what makes the stories good.
Hey, yeah, if it could be a blessing for someone else, then it's worth it.
Thanks, Will.